Mary Lord, thank you so much for joining us today on the program. We're really excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So you and I were talking a little bit offline a minute ago. This is sort of people management 101. We've got retention issues. We've got turmoil, turnover. It's a crazy time. It's a tough time to keep staff. Morale suffers. You get your good employees, you pile on them and they stick and then they get burned out. So what you're talking about now is really timely, but if you could, let's talk about, personal management 101. Sounds like it's a lot of empathy. It's kind of servant leadership, but let's just start off with kind of your overarching philosophy of why this is really needed right now, and we can drill down a little bit.
Sure. So I don't think that the people management has changed over the years. I've always believed in something called servant leadership, and servant leadership is truly defined by understanding that as a manager, as a people manager, that you are at the bottom of the hierarchy, so to speak, and you serve the people on your team. And by that, I mean, you give them the tools, the training, the right amount of work and the right equipment in order to do their jobs. And additionally, you have to love what you do. You don't want to be a people manager because it's just the next thing on the ladder. You want to be a people manager because you love people and you really want to see people grow and be successful and, reach for what they want to reach for.
Let me jump in for a second there, if I could ask you, because that sparks a question, sparks a thought. And you see this on the journalism side and everything too. A lot of times a really good reporter will get promoted out of reporting and become an editor. It's the natural, it can be a natural career ladder progression. Sometimes it takes you away from your strengths. I'm maybe speaking from experience. It takes you away from your strengths, and it's you take the job because you think, okay, that's the next step. But you make a really good point. Like one shouldn't manage or be a leader unless they really want to. I mean, as simple as it sounds, right?
Exactly. You really want to take inventory of what it is that you love to do. And for example, before I was a people manager, I was a clinical research associate, and my history is 1,000 years ago, I was a nurse. And when you go from that being a clinical research associate, which is a tough job, I know that that's a tough job, along with coordinating trials, into the people management side, you don't always get the training that you need. And so you really have to, first of all, be there for the right reason. But second of all, your education never stops. There are tons of books out there, Inquiring Leadership, Love Them or Lose Them. The management books are endless. The growth books are endless. And it's important as a manager that you continue to educate yourself over time, and you want to understand what makes people happy and what their currency is, because your currency and my currency are two different things, right?
Give us some examples of different currencies, how different things might affect. Is this like the love languages kind of thing, where it's like different things resonate with different people?
I guess I read Love Languages so many years ago. I can't speak to it, but for example, some people are motivated by money, right? It's the bottom line is, how much do I make? But some people are motivated by their ability to grow. So if they come into, say, a CRA role, which is in my world, they want to be able to grow into that next role. It could be a study manager, a clinical scientist. There are many different tracks. But if they know that that's a possibility and their manager works to help them get there, then that's motivating. And so people's currency could be anything from, they like to train. So maybe they're not a trainer, but they may be somebody who helps with the mentoring program, or teach oncology, or do something like that they love, because training is one of the side gigs that really makes them happy. When the only way you know what people's currency is to ask questions, right? And a lot of times,
let's if you could. I was thinking as you were talking, you anticipated my question, but so okay. Finding out what their currency is, I'm sure it's not as simple as saying, what's your currency? What makes you happy? Because people all sometimes don't know, or they don't know how to phrase it. And, everybody wants to make a certain decent income. Of course, that's kind of a
Right.
given. You need to, pay the bills and have a decent
Exactly.
lifestyle. And I like to buy nice coffee and things, but you get beyond that. And also different times in your life, salary might be a smaller slice of the pie, depending on where you are. So how do you suss out the currency of various employees, particularly if you're not sure? Some people are probably more clear than others.
It's first of all, something that's super important is having regular one-on-ones with each person on your team. And I've seen over time, sometimes managers get busy, they cancel their one-on-ones, and it just happens. We're all super busy, but I say that it's, in my opinion, my humble opinion, we don't cancel one-on-ones, and they really should occur at least every other week. And that's how you get to know people, is by talking to them. But the other piece of it is the manager not being the person who's doing all the talking. So if I get on a one-on-one, my favorite question is, hey, what's going on? And sometimes I don't have to say much more, because I'm going to get an hour of what's going
Right.
on. And I'm going to understand by that conversation what's important, what's bothering the person, what's stressing them out. And then on another one of my favorite questions is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is you were on Indeed.com before our one-on-one, and 10 is your boards, you're just loving what you do. I don't think I got that quite right, but that's how I gauge how busy they are. I don't want people to be bored, but I don't want people to be so stressed they're on Indeed.com. And I say that jokingly, but people give me answers like, oh, I'm about a 6, or I was an 8 last week, but I'm having a pretty good week this week. So it helps adjust the workload, which is one of the reasons why people leave.
Well, it sounds
So
like you're talking about using humor. I mean, there's truth in humor and there's gallows humor, but there's
yeah,
ways you can maybe use humor to make the point of, like, you're like you just said, if you're about to have a one-on-one with somebody, and you might say, look, I hope you weren't looking at the one as right before we got on this call, but if you were, let's talk about it. And hopefully it's probably not that bad, but you are able to touch on what could be a delicate topic, right?
yeah, because in the remote world, we don't always have the best methods to track how busy somebody is. And even if they're busy, um, I'm not going to understand perhaps which assignment is stressing them out, or which they might need co-monitoring help, or which they need to talk about, unless I'm really having that conversation. And so I do say that humorously. I don't directly ask people, hey, were you on Indeed.com?
Right, right.
But the idea is what can I do to make sure that you have what you need? And
So
that's
what are you listening for when you're doing those? Like, I mean, obviously, if someone says I'm really stressed, that's pretty obvious. But
right.
is it tone of voice? Is it if someone says, oh, I'm fine, but they don't sound so fine? What are you listening
Yeah.
for?
Um, well, first of all, one thing that I'm trying to do, it's hard because it's been a shift, is turning on the cameras. So I've been remote since 2005, and turning on the camera really wasn't something in my world that we did a lot until COVID. We started to try to turn on the cameras more. And you do get a lot with facial expressions, more than just hearing somebody on the phone. But I'll tell you, if you listen, if you are an active listener, people are going to be pretty honest with you and tell you if something's stressing them out. It's I haven't found that to be an issue really, where people just sort of close down. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm good.
When you're talking about active listener, do you mean also that if you say you and I are having a one-on-one and you manage me, I would think I'm more likely to talk to you if I think you're genuinely listening and want to help and figure it out, rather than just checking off boxes.
Right. And I don't know, I don't know what kind of jobs you've had over the past, but sometimes you will get a manager where they have so many things that they want to talk to you about that by the end of the one-on-one, you feel like, okay, you got your information, but now what about me? And so that's where you want to shy away from just doing task checkoffs. It really is. There are so many good questions. And, again, my favorite one is, what's going on? And I've sometimes had to just said that, and somebody will have a good venting session that they needed about something that's going on that's really bothered them. And then they just feel better because they talked about it. And that's just super important, right? We've gone from a generation of my generation. I guess I'm a Gen Xer, where it was that suck it up, sister, go to work, do your job. And
Well, they call it work and you get paid. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. To the smarter younger generations, where they're just really bringing their whole self to work, and different things are important to them. And not to go to a different topic, but that is a really interesting topic nowadays. We are managing 5 generations within the workplace, and that's really kind of cool if you think about it, because the older generations have a lot of experience to bring to the table, and the younger generations have a lot of technology and just new thinking, rethinking, looking at things in a new way that we can really embrace and work together on. And at
I
the
think
same
that's worth touching. Sorry, I think that's worth touching on a little more here, actually, because you make a good point. So if I'm going to give myself some years. I'm older than this, but if I'm a late 40s or 50-year-old manager, and I've got people younger than me and older than me, maybe if you could talk a little bit about some of the bigger, very generalizing. I know everybody's different, everybody's the same in different ways, but what are some of the generational things as a manager you might want to be on the lookout for with managing folks of different ages?
Well, for one, understanding how they communicate. And if you think about it, the newest generation that's come into the workplace, they don't remember a world without an iPhone, not just any phone like you and I remember the flip phones and the rotary. Right. Maybe I don't know how old you are.
I remember rotary fine. Yes, yes.
But that's that's what they've known as technology. So it occurred to me, this is an example. One time I was like, why are they not putting a voicemail message on their phone? And it was driving me crazy. And I don't know, I had an epiphany one day. It's like, because they don't listen to voicemail, they text, and I'm the dinosaur here who still listens to voicemail. So it's just some simple things like that, and understanding that. And I don't want to put every generation in a box, because that's not fair either. But understanding that I'm more apt to want to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, and other people are more comfortable texting, and why don't they just text me that? And so
I've had some younger employees tell me, and they don't mean this to me, I don't think personally, I hope not, but they like to text, they like to email, but they consider phone calls a little intrusive. or they associate it with kind of an emergency.
Right.
Where if it's, and if it's an emergency, it's an emergency, but more often than that, if you're just checking in. So like to your point, you want to have a sense. I mean, even nowadays, if somebody calls me unscheduled, I tend to think, uh-oh.
Isn't that interesting? Because do you remember when talking on the phone with your friends was like something you did?
Exactly.
All the time.
It was social and exciting. So yeah, okay. So are there other things that managers, say, any age manager, but to your point, most people are managing, especially if they have a large group like you do. You've got people from 20s to 70s, 80s, whatever, right?
Yeah. It's really connecting people. We have some great mentors who are not just our, I don't want to say older, seasoned, more experienced. Some of our great mentors are our younger people who are just coming in, and so they can mentor us and different things that they're great at, technology. And what's so fun about some of the new, where I work, they've had an intern program where they come in and they sort of promote them, and it's exciting to see that just excitement and that newness come into the group. It's like an injection of excitement. But we have just the different experiences, I think, help bring the blendedness together and make us a stronger group, if that makes sense.
What's your team now? How many people are you managing at the moment?
Gosh, our
if you have to stop
and
think, that's a bad sign. That's
well,
tough.
No, we just had some hiring, so we've moved some stuff around. So 10 is our average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, something else I want to ask you before I let you go. You and I were talking earlier, and you've touched on this a bit with the one-on-ones. You make me think, actually, an old boss of mine at ACRP, Jim Cremidas, was a great executive director. I had a one-on-one with him every week, and he was religious about not canceling it. And I used to almost think he was not uptight, but I used to think, I'd say to him, quickly, I'd say, I'm fine, we can catch up next week. And I didn't have any fires or whatever, but he was really good about, like, we didn't cancel it much. It was
Right.
pretty rare to cancel it. And I understand a little better now from hearing about you, how important it is that these are big priorities. They're not just like meetings to fit in when you can fit them in or something. They're as important as anything
No.
else going on in your week.
That's, to me, that's your job. Your team is your job, and everything else is less priority. So if you're skipping your one-on-ones, in my opinion, you're skipping the most important part of your job.
Right.
So, and those one-on-ones don't always have to be about work.
Right.
People have a life outside of work, and it is nice that now people can bring their whole self to work. So knowing what's going on in their world outside of work is fun and makes you human and makes you more of a partner.
Mary Laura, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really helpful conversation.
All right, thank you.